Well, I'll try and keep this as brief as possible. I think those of you will know that we've been at this for a long time here in Hackney, not just as a cycling campaign, but cycling as a whole has been a very active part of the transport mix here in Hackney for a number of years. Lots of things have been done and established by the council. Will, you've talked about the numbers, but from a council point of view, there have been a number of deliverables in the last, I'm going to say a few decades, but more specifically, more recently in the last 5 years, where there's been an acceleration of delivery towards specifically active travel. So walking and cycling improvements have been fairly sustained. That's been great. So thank you for the council making those things happen. Now, we have quite a specific set of asks, and we've set those up. I'm going to just type through these slides, so if you're online, maybe Brian's going to show you what those are. But basically, our mayoral asks moving forward in 2022 are the following. We want to enable all children to safely walk and cycle to every primary and secondary school in Hackney. I'll give you all 5 and then I'll just quickly elaborate on them. The second one is to continue to roll out low traffic neighbourhoods and maximise their potential for safe cycling. Third, to provide secure and affordable cycle parking in Hackney for all. Fourth is to make Hackney housing estates accessible. And finally, to take urgent action on Hackney's dangerous roads and junctions. Okay, so number 1, to enable all children to safely walk and cycle to every primary school in Hackney. Moreover, there should be cycle streets, the use of filters, protected cycle lanes on main roads or safe junctions for every primary and secondary school in Hackney by 2026. It's quite a specific date, but quite a wide ask, and we're aware of that. When you look at the map of Hackney, our school streets programme is fairly formidable. It started off a number of years ago in 2016 as an ask. It was actually an ask in a church in Hackney Central, and then that turned into a programme of works which has been accelerating in the last few years. We think we could do more on that. We noticed that secondary schools are still excluded from that programme, and we think that that's not right. We think they should be included. We know from numbers and surveys done that the number of children who want to travel actively is very high, and the numbers that do still remain not, they're not, there's a disparity there, and that needs addressing. We know that across London, 8 in 10 children do not get 1 hour of physical exercise a day, and 4 in 10 children here in Hackney and as well as across London are suffering from either being overweight or suffering from obesity. That accidental exercise, which we can gain through the use of active travel in the morning, so getting kids scooting, cycling, and walking, is something that we want to really progress. And we know that when those programmes are established properly, they're quite exciting. Kids love them. So, more please. Number 2, low traffic neighbourhoods. We've had lots in the past. Hackney's full of historical low traffic neighbourhoods. They're not new. They've been around for decades. There have been, we know that more recently we've had these new ones introduced. Hackney Downs, we've had around on the fields, down in Hoxton, and around Stoke Newington. But when you look at the map of Hackney, actually there's a huge amount that has happened historically, and we think that that should continue. If it's good enough for the people of the Beauvoir, it's good enough for the whole borough, and we think that more could be done on that. We'd like to see more action, let's go back slightly, in terms of pathways, so making sure that links are made between low traffic neighbourhoods, so where there are major roads, crossings and routes allow safe cycling and transit between those, and that would include signage, so we need to make sure that people know where they're going, because that's part of the issue of getting people out and about. There we go, there's a nice historical, that's Brantford, where I live. That's been around for about 40 years now, and it's a very high cycling and walking area. Number 3, this has been in the news today actually, providing secure and affordable cycle parking in Hackney for all. We know that Hackney is pretty class leading in terms of the number of secure cycle parking spaces, but we noticed that there's, again, a disparity between the number of on-street and those on estates. We think that the estate parking programme is not adequate, and that needs to be accelerated and enhanced. We'd also like to see a pilot scheme for cargo bikes or adapted cycles. We notice that that's missing at the moment. We know that there's been a pilot scheme for cargo bike hire, but not for people using their own, so that's something we could look at. And also, parking for cycles should not cost more than for any motor vehicle, and that's quite an important part. I'll just highlight this, that there are huge numbers of people who would like to be able to cycle and end up with their bikes in weird places. If you look around, you see them on balconies at high level. For me, that's a sign of planning failure. If you see a bicycle in an awkward place to park, it probably means that it's not used as much as it could be. Okay, fourth one, making housing estates accessible. We've noticed, and in discussions with sort of wider groups, that lots of Hackney housing estates have significant barriers, literally physical barriers to making them more accessible for walking and cycling. This sort of, I've just screenshotted this, but this sort of thing whereby you wouldn't be able to get a mobility scooter through this because there's no drop curb and there's no way through that path. That happens repeatedly across Hackney homes, and we think that more could and should be done in terms of auditing the spaces that Hackney is in control of, and making sure that that's something that there's a rolling programme of works to address. And finally, this is very, this is something that's, it should be happening continuously, and it's not. And some of this is not within the mayoral gift, and I appreciate that in terms of TfL's roads. But many of these are. There are a number of major roads in Hackney that are so catastrophically dangerous. We had a gentleman who was run over outside my house about 3 or 4 days ago. He's in critical condition on Seven Sisters Road. That is a road that had promised cycle tracks over 6 years ago by TfL, still not delivered. It would be running outside this large estate here on the Woodbury Down. It's not, it still hasn't happened, and more political pressure is required on TfL, and the programme of works that's been stalled around Pembury Junction, Mare Street, Morning Lane, Stamford Hill, all need addressing, and there has to be more a concerted and a really forthright effort to make those roads safe for everyone, because we know that the number one barrier to people cycling is fear of the roads, basically, and that's not going to change whilst we don't do anything about them. So I'm going to leave it there, and I'm going to hand it over, if that's okay, to our candidate.